partha sarjivati. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haya aghayurindriya rama mogham partha sajivati. Word by word translation. Evam, thus, pravartim, established by the Vedas, chakram, cycle, na, does not, anuvartayati, adopt, iha, in this life, ya, one who, aghayu, whose life is full of sins, indriya arama, satisfied in sense gratification, mogham, uselessly, partha, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, sa, he, jivati, lives. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, the human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the three ways, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalist who are above vice and virtue. For those who are engaged in sense gratification, require purification by the above mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the whole world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajna, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajna one doesn't become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namo. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Shwapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Utapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakha Vitam. हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमो. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak on this very, very powerful verse. Here, Krishna is explaining, that the karma kanda and how it dovetails into karma yoga gradually. And here there are certain literals which are very, very critical in understanding this verse. Um, there is a word Krishna uses here. He says chakram, and we're going to dwell more on that. And then Krishna is saying aghayur. Aghayur means those whose life is full of sins. And then he is referring to Arjuna as Partha, as the son of Pritha, or the son of Kunti Maharani, whose other name is Pritha. So we'll try to discuss about these three things. And then Aghayur, whose life is full of sins. And there we need to slightly refer back to our previous verses. And in the previous verse, Krishna in 3.12, 4 verses before, Krishna referred to those people who are not paying taxes after using this mother nature for their different things are called thieves. And now in 16, he's going a step ahead, trying to say that those people are not just thieves, they are aghayu. That means their life is full of sins. So as you know, when you have your tax season is coming out, and anytime you do not end up filing taxes, or you do not file tax properly, you underpay taxes, then Uncle Sam will come and get you. And they generally give a lot of challenges if you do not pay taxes properly. So here, Uncle Sam gives a lot of trouble if you don't pay taxes. But in the mother nature, there is Father Sham Sundar. Father Sham is there. And if you do not pay taxes, we all know what the consequences are. And to put the respective regulations, Krishna is laying out the rules and regulations. Father Sham Sundar is saying it will be full of sins if you do not go and live within the confines of this cycle, chakra, we're going to discuss today about. So we should all recognize the fact that we have a material body. We'll decay someday, 60, 70, 80 years. But we have something in our heart which is not material, which is spiritual, which is the soul and the super soul. So the soul which exists alongside our heart is spiritual, and it is living in a area which is not conducive to it. Say, for example, you have a fish. Fish is living so beautifully in river, in water. So you take the fish out and put it in nice milk and nice, lassi, all very opulent things. The fish is going to have a lot of trouble. Fish will eventually pass his body because the constitutional position of fish is when he is in water. Likewise, the spiritual soul in us is living in a material body. Whenever we have, some of these transplants, whether you have prosthetics or you have where, they ampute and start putting different mechanical parts in the body, or if they put a pacemaker in our heart for some reason, the body takes a lot of time to adjust. And we do all kind of chiropractor to get that adjusted, that material part in the body. But we have a special guest, which is part and parcel of the Supreme, which is the soul, and we do not take any care of it. We do not do any chiropractor. We do not nurture it. We just let it out. We enjoy with the illusory energy, and then we forget about it. And when you think about Uncle Sam giving us a lot of trouble, because if you don't do the 1040 properly, likewise, Father Sham, what he is going through when he knows that we are not taking due care in our hearts in trying to nurture that particular thing, which is 1 by 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair, which is called soul, and we are not nurturing it. So it's a and also we should recognize, Prabhupada mentions when he talks about this 3.16, that, say, for example, a tree is a huge tree, and the tree has, thousands and millions of leaves. If you start putting water in each of these 10,000 leaves, it's not going to help the tree. The tree needs water in the roots. And Prabhupada also talks about, we have 9 orifices in our body, and it's called Navadwara to our. And actually, this 9 holes in our body has to be used for the right reason. You cannot eat in any orifice which is other than your mouth, because the physical conditioning of the body has been made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a way that we all coexist together. But when we try to misuse the eating not through the mouth example, or putting water in the leaves rather than the root, then it is very difficult. Like, say, for example, if the hand says, hey, the mouth and tongue, they're relishing the cake always, and I, being the hand and finger, I'm not going to take the cake to the mouth. And when they do not take the cake to the mouth, they stay undernourished and they become frail. So the only way, we all know, is to uh, absorb and prolong our natural relationship, is to understand what the Supreme Personality of Godhead is saying. And there is a very strong reference to Lord Krishna, and he is referred as Tirthapada. And the reason why I wanted to discuss that is I wanted to lay down some principles for this discussion. So Mother Devahuti has a son. His name is Kapila Dev. But Kapila Dev is nothing but, he is no one other than the Lord himself. But Kapila Dev was more knowledgeable. Even if Mother Devahuti's son, Kapila Dev is much younger uh, to Mother Devahuti, but he was a bright person and he is a supreme person. And there are interaction between them. And sometimes when strong personalities meet and discuss about them, now after millions of years ago, later, we still discuss about those discussions, right? Likewise, here, Mother Devahuti is referring to Krishna as Tirthapada. That means where all the holy places are coming from the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And if you are staying and taking care by doing devotional service to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, then there is no need to go and do anything. There's no need to do any renunciation or anything for that matter, because Lord's lotus feet is all we need. So, with that, let's dive deep into what Krishna is saying in this verse in terms of sacrifice, or the circle of sacrifice. He uses the word chakram, right? We went through it. Chakra, there are many chakras in Bhagavad Gita. You may have heard about, the cycle of repeated birth and death, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. That's another one cycle. But in this cycle, Krishna is referring to the circle of sacrifices. And he's saying, anybody who doesn't follow this circle of sacrifices, he is sinful. He is not just a thief, he is sinful. So the extent of punishment from Uncle Sam, if it is X, then this is way more than X. That's why Father Sam is much more potent than Uncle Sam. And here in this circle of sacrifice, he says that, which is essentially what this chapter is all about, prescribed duties. Karma is prescribed duties, right? So we'll start with prescribed duties. And then based on the Vedas, which was documented, the prescription and the Vedas comes from the Supreme Lord, and from the Supreme Lord we have the living beings, and they subsist on food grains which are produced by rains. And then where does rain come from? The rain comes from Yajna. Should not be just misconstrued as homam. It is also homam. Also, it means sacrifices. And once from the sacrifices, uh, rains, food grains, uh, human beings, they offer their obeisances and do services to the Supreme Lord. And from Veda, which has actually come from Lord's mouth, and then that cycle, right? It's a clockwise cycle in this case, or anti-clockwise cycle in this case. Essentially, the prescribed duties are born from the performance of yoga sacrifices, and then it's prescribed within Vedas to do all this, individual sacrifices, and then Supreme Lord is pleased, and so on. So this sort of cycle of sacrifice is critical to this verse. Rains, when evaporation happens, rains falls, then there is food grains. Food grains are taken by human beings, and human beings uh, offer uh, devotional service to the Supreme Lord, and which has actually come from Vedas. And this prescribed duty, the karma kanda, dovetailing into karma yoga, is is a prescription for this chakra, which Lord Krishna is explaining. So the purpose of human life is to please the Supreme Lord. It is not with a intent that the Lord is enforcing that, but Lord is suggesting that you just take one step, I'll take 10 steps to help you. So the purpose of human life is to please the Supreme Lord, because we are part and parcel of the Supreme. Aham bija pradapita, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that I am seed giving father of all beings. And the best process is to please the Supreme Lord by unalloyed and undeviated devotional service. And in this age of Kali, Sankirtan Yajna, chanting the holy names of the Lord, or discussing about the Lord based on the 9 processes of bhakti is recommended. And in this age, the mantra is the Maha Mantra for this age of Kali: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So if you see this verse, if we kind of try to go back and look at it, so Krishna is saying the cycle, the sacrifice cycle is recommended. And if the sacrifice cycle is not followed, then there are consequences, there are sinful reactions. So anytime we have any work, the work gives us some money, and we either spend or enjoy on it. So that, as you can see, it has consequences. You did some work, but in order to think that you are the proprietor of that work, there are 2 things here. You have the work and you have the effect of work. Once the effect of work is consumed by you, you are pretty much staying in the karma cycle. And likewise, and that karma cycle gets you attracted to karma bandhana. And that's why Radhanath Maharaj so nicely once said that when you're doing devotional service, do the devotional service with detachment. Once you get attached to this devotional service, then, say for example, you are making pizza, for example, and once you're making pizza in the temple, but if you stay with the attachment to your devotional service, once the service of making pizza goes away from you to somebody else, your devotional service takes a hit. And that is where our devotional service has to be done with an intent that whatever you're doing is part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna is multidimensional, right? You can do anything for Krishna. There are so many things. You can sing for Krishna, you can do art for Krishna, you can write for Krishna, you can speak for Krishna, you can hear Krishna Katha. So there is no end to doing devotional service to Krishna. Whether you are speaking or you are hearing, your senses are engaged in the service of Krishna. And that is where it is not recommended to get attached to devotional service rather than uh, getting a habit for doing devotional service with humility. And and and, and that is where Lord Krishna is referring to Arjuna as son of Pritha. And why does he refer to him as son of Pritha? Sometimes Krishna refers to Arjuna as Gudakesha because he has a message to tell him about his archery skills he practiced in the night, curtailing sleep, curtailing ignorance. And here, Krishna is referring to Arjuna as Pritha because Maharani Kunti epitomized sacrifice. All her life is filled with sacrifice. And that's the reason why in Maharani Kunti's prayers, Maharani Kunti never wanted material happiness because the material happiness will take her away from the thought of the Supreme. And that's why uh, Lord Krishna in this verse is exemplifying that quality of, of, of Maharani Kunti by referring to Krishna as Pritha. So, three things: the sacrifice chakra, the cycle of sacrifice, and the effect, the cause being the cycle of chakra, and the effect of full of sins, which is even worse than stealing, as discussed by Lord Krishna in 3.12, and then referring to Arjuna by exemplifying her mother. And and that is where it's a perfect segue to our subsequent thing we wanted to discuss about the sacrifice for the current age. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 3rd chapter, verse 52, which you may have heard before, it's mentioned, Kritayad Dhayato Vishnum Tretayam Yajato Makai Dwapare Paricharyam Kaloto Dharikirtana. That means in the age of Satyuga, Valmiki Rishi, he did meditation for 60,000 years. At that time, in the age of Satyuga, people were living for 100,000 years. Out of 100,000 years, 60,000 years, Maharshi Valmiki spent in meditation. In the Dwapara Yuga, when uh, the standards were lower than Satyuga, which was a age of meditation, people started doing sacrifices, the so-called yajnas in Treta Yuga. The impurities were less, the ingredients were pure. The verses, as you can see, we are fumbling with these verses. At the time, they were very pure in uttering the mantras, and they were performing sacrifices. And in Dwapara Yuga, they were serving the lotus feet by Archana. And with everything in decline in this age of Kali, the chanting of the holy name, even if this yuga has all the challenges in life, even if this yuga is a very inferior, a lot of people read, uh, you know, undocumented, inappropriate things, hear, read The aspects, the interactions are very contaminated. But still, this yuga has a lot of power. Like, say, for example, you may have gone for some courses in your prior life. So there'll be some courses which are so tough, and the teacher has not given you enough time. And the conditioning you may have encountered is in your college, there was a break or something, and you are not in the college. So, because of the circumstances, sometimes what the teacher does is the teacher says, hey, you can write the exam open book. So the standards are way less. And what happens? Once he makes the exam open book, you end up doing very, very well. And also that helps. So the even if Kali Yuga has so much of imperfections, but Krishna has given us this open mantra to us, exactly like how the professor has given us this open book exam. It's very simple, and the only way in this age of Kali is Hari Kirtana. That means only by chanting the names of Hari can give us that love for Godhead, which is not possible in other yugas. 60,000 years Valmiki Maharshi meditated. Can't do it now. Likewise, can do sacrifices with good ingredients and uttering of the mantra in a such a potent way. Dwapar Yuga can do the archanam, which in Dwarka, in various different places, people used to um, conduct. But the best part is in Kali Yuga, Lord has given us a very easy method, very simple method. And you can only receive the simple method if your thought process is simple. Because generally, it is very difficult to conceive that how can this Mahamantra, these people are calling it Mahamantra, is enough to give us the spiritual benefits. It's not easy for people to understand. And likewise, it is very easy for people to understand. So when the South Indian Brahmin, uh, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met the South Indian Brahmin, he was, holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down, like this. He was holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down, and tears were coming from his eyes. He didn't read Bhagavad Gita. The South Indian Brahmin did not read Bhagavad Gita because he cannot read Bhagavad Gita, and his superiors were always making fun of him that he, being a Brahmin, cannot read. But he was having tears from his eyes. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw, he asked, why are you crying? Then the South Indian Brahmin said, holding the Bhagavad Gita exactly how upside down, he said, thinking that the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instead of fighting in the battle, choose to become a driver of the chariot of his devotee, gets me crying. So he has understood this. He has not read anything. He has understood that. But in this age, there's so much of complications that we cannot understand that this 16 round of chanting of this holy name on a daily basis can help us purify and get us to the other side and grow that love for the Supreme. So it's very easy to understand if we choose to accept this, and it's equally very difficult to understand if we choose not to accept it. So the education, thinking that having great education will align us in thinking and accepting this process, is not like that. But slowly and slowly, in prominent institutions in here in India, people are recognizing this process of higher taste, which is put forth by His Divine Grace, and this chanting of holy name, which is a bona fide process instituted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he has done that, people are slowly coming on board, but it is very easy to understand. And the only conclusive process, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 12.3.52, is in this age of Kali, simply chanting the holy name is, is enough. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gati Annatha. So, so Krishna is saying in a very nice way that he's extending his recognition for punishment from a thief to a person with life is full of sins. And that's why, unless we try to dovetail our activities in the form of any form of sacrifice, whether the sacrifice in the form of contributing to the temple, or doing our dose of morning hearing during Brahma Muhurta, or discussing the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, where it makes it gets everybody feel blissful, exactly like how the personalities, when they were discussing about the Supreme, were feeling blissful about when they were discussing. Like nowadays, in the morning, we're going through the Vidur Maitreya Sambad, which is so astounding as to how, Vidurji is going to meet Maitreya Muni and what transpired between them. And that gives happiness to the people who are hearing. So when this discussion about the Supreme happens, sometimes if you refer that in India we have 330 million Deva Devis, and people are willing to follow all of them. So we have to recognize that when in the beginning, when these sages, they were trying to tell about the glories of the Supreme Purna Purushottam Krishna, who has everything, who has the five opulences plus the sixth opulence of renunciation. The aspect of renunciation cannot be understood by the audience in front of this rishis and munis. This audience had craving, had desire for money, for benefits. And at the time, if the munis and rishis at the time would propose this topic of renunciation, the austerities, the audience is not going to listen. So if you see historically, our munis and rishis, in order to imbibe that element of spiritual alignment, have often mentioned about the different devas and devis who are like the head of the department under the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that is when the people have taken it to a different level. They think that that's where it ended. But Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita gives that element of linkage between these head of the departments with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is not how the Vedas, Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Gita, which is presented to the audience. It's how people have caught onto it and moved on. So we cannot defy or undermine the importance of the head of the departments, like this 330 million devas and devis. But at the same time, as the knowledge knowledge get enhanced with these association. And as people understand the the different verses the Lord is speaking, or in Srimad Bhagavatam there are discussions, then as Prabhupada is saying, just by following the mundane principle is not enough in this verse. So we have to transcend that. So it is not just this moral codes of asking for benefit from Lord Ganesh, or getting some educational benefit from Mother Saraswati. It is beyond this point of moral codes, and that is when we have to transcend. So the way it was proposed, the 330 million Devadevis we have, is not with an intent to kind of give a democratic process of uh, spiritual leadership, but to at least make them understand, even if you have desires, there are ways it can be satisfied by the head of the departments. So in Krishna consciousness, in spiritual activities, there is not a single answer which is correct all the time. And that is where we have to go beyond the modes which are proposed to us, and try to understand that from the context of that verse itself. Because here Krishna is saying we have to perform yajna to get rain. But that yajna can be constituted differently based on how you ask a question. But in the confines of this verse, we have to stay relevant with this chakra, or the cycle of sacrifice, which we discussed. And we have to answer the question in the confines of this verse, that the rains are produced by the yajna. So with that, I'd like to end here. I'd like to open up for some comments, because uh, your comments and context helps all of us, and it gives a better meaning to this discussion we had today. So once again, thank you so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hemajaganath Guruji, thank you so much for a wonderful class. So much wonderful points. Very nice. We'll request devotees if you have any comments, reflections, anything to add, any questions, please open up. Anything you would like to add? Any comments, reflections, anything?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanvat Pranam, August Prabhupada. It's a wonderful class. Prabhuji, your class is always very beautiful and very nice. Prabhuji, few things that struck me and I liked about it. Probably I will keep it for my bhakti. That if ever I fall down, I remember this verse. Firstly, what you said about devotion, that in devotion also we should not get attached. That but I've heard stories about Indra Prabhu, that he was offered different services, but he always wanted to stick around. He always wanted to do more, you know uh, you know singing, and that's why he probably moved to different places. But these are exceptional cases, I think, and Prabhupada he wrote letters to Prabhupada to ask those questions. Prabhuji, my question here, which I wanted to ask you, Prabhuji, is that even a few weeks ago there was a question whether the Brajvasis that are there, they have so much love for Krishna, but they are not knowledgeable. And today when you said in the class that there is no perfect answer in Krishna's bhakti, right? Every answer is differently classified based on different modes of a person is going through. So today I think it makes little bit clearance, but still I will again ask you this question. um Prabhuji, we sometimes we get confused whether a person who's not, he's there are so many stories in Jagannath Prabhu's. We have heard so many stories. Old lady making khichdi for Jagannath ji. So many stories that we've heard about. They are like, they're very emotional. Their devotion is so much higher. But of course, they would have not read Gita because it is not accessible to them. It is not given to them because of their lower caste. They don't fall in the Brahmin caste, but they are not even given the thing. But they still have so much devotion for the Lord. So that is a different classification. And then a person who reads Bhagavad Gita, listens to like Sukhdev Goswami when he started giving Bhagavatam, even Narad Muni, all the big sages came to listen to him. That increases the devotion. So Prabhuji, I just sometimes get confused that because of my less knowledge, I don't understand that is it sentimental, somebody who falls into it, or you need to know about Krishna, you need to know about Bhagavatam, you need to understand nectar of devotion, then only you have a pure bhakti. How do you?
Yeah. So thank you, Mataji. I think I understood your question. See, uh, there are two things. First is our natural inclination to the love for Godhead. So the natural inclination for the love for Godhead is not going to be sort of massaged or manipulated by any artificial manner. However, Srila Prabhupada has instituted a very methodical process. Uh, and it is based on a, a, a lot of research in understanding the step-by-step process through, you mentioned about nectar of devotion, gradually. So that is done to come up with a set process. We have this Bhakti Vaibhav, different, certifications, um, and so on. So the way I would like to characterize your love for the Supreme is more a personal relationship. So the way you do your deity worship in your house, the way you interact with the devotees and do the service, accordingly Lord reciprocates you. Lord gives you that element of bliss. So that nobody can really take away through this process. But generally speaking, there are different kinds of people who come to ISKCON at different times and with the different conditioning. So in order to really get everybody into the same modality, if I may, there are various paths, and these are done by some of the bright, brahmacharis who have joined, who have seen people evolve, and there is there's a there's a science behind it. So I just want to give an example here. About His Grace Radheshyam Prabhu. He's from Pune. He's from originally. He's a very bright
Yes,
person individually.
yes,
So
we
he
listen to
has,
that.
is Mataji. So he has gone to different, IITs, NITs, and he has instituted that process called voice. So, and it's not as if anybody who joins voice is the only way to seek the Supreme. But from a student perspective, the people who have come out of the voice process, they have really done well. Actually, to tell you the truth, many of us who are in this call, they have not gone to voice, but you all have a liking for hearing. So that is absolutely fine. So to answer your question, two ways. Nobody can take away your relationship with the Supreme. It is an individual process. Once, Govindran Mataji in a class, he mentioned about that personal interaction with the Supreme, and nobody can take that away. But we have to make sure that there is a order and some path, and that is exactly why we, people may have recommended in your Bhakti Vriksha to read this one first, because it has worked well for the majority. Does that help, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, a lot. I think what I understand from your question is that uh, uh, of course there is no my understanding, there is no categorization of bhakti, because there have been so great sages, surdas, so many beautiful there who've been in true love with the Lord, true love. How did they get? Probably, they have this different stories of their past lives where they are highly elevated souls. They understand what we are reading, so we can generate the love. They are already at a different level of love, with the Lord. So of course, but yeah, I mean, they have their knowledge coming from their inner voice. But what I understand from you is that Prabhupada gave this for today's you know yuga, where people like us who don't know what is the purpose of life. There is a study pattern that is given, how you can increase your knowledge about Krishna. I think this is what I understand, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji. And I would like to add one more thing, Mataji. See, Prabhupada wanted us to read his books. The reason why we want to read his books, Prabhupada says, is anywhere other than this Krishna consciousness. There are many yogas. There are many people who are, either selling spirituality, or they want you to become their disciples. So we need to be very strong fundamentally, uh, because unless we read his books, because Prabhupada's method, which is culminating in higher taste, is very, very unique. Actually, our process, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya process, is very, very unique. And actually, uh, personally speaking, when I go to India, when I see so many cross cultures, it does affect my chanting as well. So, in order to not counter in a aggressive way, but in order to personally counter how they are coming from, जैसे कि some people say सबका मालिक एक, and how that will transpire in your thought process and your actions. So in order to really counter this, we need to have some of the basic concepts which we all are going through our knowledge acquisition process. That's the reason why we all have to read more and more, just to stay afloat in this illusory world. Is that fine, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one thing just for my own self, because I just do not understand so many things. I struggle with a lot of things. Prabhuji, if there is a shortcoming, because I'm just starting this path, where I understand the shloka very much. I cannot speak the shloka of, Gita verse, and somehow it doesn't appeal to me, because of course I am not that knowledgeable to understand the words of Krishna. I can start with the sometimes if I doesn't understand, should it be a showstopper for me?
Yeah. So I don't know if some of you have got a chance to read Ocean of Mercy by His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So that book is actually no less than a thriller. So in that book, somewhere in the middle, Bhakti Charu Maharaj went in and he was very impressed by Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada, I want to get a grasp of this Sanskrit uh, utterance, the way you are basically presenting Sanskrit. Prabhupada said, you don't have to. You don't have to, learn or speak Sanskrit the way I am speaking. That is not your purpose. Is to have that inherent love for Krishna, and it is a gradual thing. And don't overdo it. But as you can see, Bhakti Charu Maharaj, over the period of time, went on to speak so nicely. So just because you're not able to utter a verse properly, and also in Bhagavad Gita, sometime we're also going to read, the people who are carried away by the flowery words of Veda are fools. Krishna has mentioned it in Bhagavad Gita. We're going to cover it sometime in future. So trying to get carried away by the flowery words of Sanskrit is not so. So, so you are not alone, and that should not be a hindrance. Okay, Mataji?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Any other comments, Prabhuji and Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful discourse. Prabhuji, like you just mentioned, not to be overtaken by the flowery, chanting of verses and narration and narrating. So also, I want to know, like, similarly, I think, when you take over Krishna consciousness, path of bhakti, there are also some expectations. I mean, some reciprocations, which you expect that Krishna will protect you, health, family and that's how it starts. But my question is, like, I mean, this could be circumstantial, and people might, I can speak for myself also, just take it to that level and try to benchmark what I'm, So is that a right approach? I mean, is that something we should also be watchful for, or just be more focused, of course, on the Krishna prema, unconditional love, because those thoughts also crosses our mind, family, how well family is doing in terms of, the material aspirations. The kids got a job or something. We try to compare between the devotees. So all those thoughts crosses our minds also, which we call a well-being because Krishna reciprocates. So I think that's how to get over that attachment and just keep moving on and get less focused on those thoughts.
Okay, so the first thing, if I have to kind of break your question into two parts. So if Krishna consciousness becomes mechanical and you wake up early, hear some nice katha, and then you end up going to a job, and in the evening hear some of your nice katha. The first thing which happens is, your waking up habit improves. And second thing, even if you do not, we all do not understand Srila Prabhupada's verses the way he wants to transpire, but even if we just mechanically read it, our English will get better. And then once we mechanically chant, at least we're focused. So even if we do not become Krishna consciousness, right here, our habits have changed, our reading habits have improved, and waking up has improved. Now, but what happens? Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, even if you have joined, because Krishna also means there are certain kind of people who come to me, and one such people is for benefit. So even if you have joined Krishna consciousness for benefit, there is nothing wrong in that, because this is exactly that verse where we are really going from Krishna Kanda, Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga. Karma Kanda is, classic example of Karma Kanda is we do some, some Narayan Puja or whatever, and it has benefits. So there is, even if we end up having Karma Kanda benefits, it's still, so how, if at all we are not getting the right results, should we be perturbed? That's your second part of the question. So yes, people have left, and because what happens is see, we are human beings, right? So there is that element of anger, there is an element of ego, and it sets in, and that's when people react, and you do not expect, and all this is it's not the right end, but sometimes it happens. So when that happens, right, we just have to calm down, because even if this Krishna consciousness doesn't percolate in your heart right away, but the seeds are so powerful, it doesn't leave you. So you have invested, the investment may not multiply, but it is such a solid investment. After 5 years, you leave Krishna consciousness, but this mantra is so powerful, it basically have not left your system. So it is going to stay with you. So even if there is challenges in the family front, this and that, but as Prabhupada also said, I may not be pure, but what I'm speaking is so pure that just by abiding by that, there is benefit. So probably if it becomes a struggle, we may just slow down, but um, it's not going to leave you. You may leave Krishna consciousness, but the seeds of Krishna consciousness are so strong, it's not going to leave you. That's the reason why you don't have to lose hope. Just associating with the devotees is enough to get you hooked into this. Did I answer your question, Paul?
I think what I was asking was the fact that it has reciprocated well, and things have been on a very favorable path. My question was how to get out of that reciprocation aspect and just be more dovetail into into bhakti, and just forget about uh, like anything results, even the well-being results, or because the question crosses the mind is now for almost a year this has been we had COVID and situation, so this could be something situational, circumstantial. So how to make sure that time comes, we still keep doing what we're doing, and there should be aggressive bhakti and preaching and classes, this thing goes on. So that's exactly what I was trying to get to.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. So see, okay, so I was seeing one of the programs about how the excessive fertilizers have made some of the eggplants we see here, and nowadays we have also started getting this highly fertilized eggplant in India, also big eggplants, and likewise. So I would say, Prabhuji, in order to accelerate in our spiritual path, if we accelerate too much in not abiding by the natural progress, there could be some challenges. So I would request that even if you are getting that reciprocatory benefit, and you're not feeling that aspect of detached, just have to give some time with the association. All these things will go away. Actually, it'll go away naturally. So now that you said in COVID we had this 1 year thing, that's why you are confined to this Zoom sessions, and it opens up what happens. But actually our prescribed duty is to support our family. We have to do something to keep our family rooted, but we cannot give up our work to not support our family. So we have to do that. But as your family is seeing you chanting, hearing morning, evening, kirtan, this, that, so they are also going to, so it's a gradual process, Prabhu. We will not overdo, we'll not have to accelerate that. And anytime you have a natural progression with natural this thing, always it is going to be better. And over fertilizing the plants, the Bhakti Lata bridge is not going to help us. But you do more reading, more association, and that will definitely give you bliss. And slowly you realize, once you have that higher taste for rasgulla, you will probably not start eating some things which is a bit inferior. So your higher taste will sort of transcend you, and not and you will not be so much we all have had that lower taste in the past, but still we it's a journey, right? We just have to improve, and every time, whenever the improvement stops, we die. So it will go on till the end of our this thing, and just being there is enough. As they say, joining the last bogie in a train going to Golok Vrindavan is good enough. It doesn't matter whether you're in the first bogie or the last bogie. The bogie is going to get us there. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So we'll end here, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nothing. Okay. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Nice association, devotees discussion, spiritual discussions. Yeah, this is what, that we can open up anything in our heart, reflections, comments, questions, so that it's collectively, or it's resonate, that the proper answer comes out and we all can benefit out of it. Thank you so much. Very nice. Everybody contributing, everybody participating. Very nice. And this is
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, go ahead, mother.
As I was just visualizing when Prabhuji was saying about the COVID and the situation we're all in, feels like that the Leela of Govardhan Leela. Just imagine a cloud, dark cloud of Indra pouring rain, and it's just like dark cloud of COVID, everywhere, and we take shelter under the Govardhan hill, under the lotus feet of Lord. Just imagine that. Maybe that also feels the Leela in front of, like, just thinking about that also helps us to relieve, the anxiety and stress we are in the situation.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, Mataji. Yeah, so those 7 days, nobody thought in the Brajavasis that this person who is just 7 years old can shake the Govardhan hill, and under the Govardhan hill, everybody will get crushed. Nobody thought that. Everybody had complete surrender. And this COVID has really aroused that sense of association. Actually, if you think about it, before 12 months, we were actually not having this much of Sangha before. And now this COVID has turned it into a morning 1 hour, evening 1 hour Sangha. We were hardly meeting, only the Sunday love feast was so we can find solace in some of these wonderful pastimes you mentioned, and draw some inspiration and foster our surrender to the Supreme.
Very true. I think the thought should not be so much evaluating the situations and seeing how the whole scenario, the speculation, but take it as a grace of Krishna and move on. Because he's got 1,000 ways to give us grace, and and the reciprocation which keeps coming, and that's what we hope for. Thank you.
So without his mercy, even this is not possible. Everything is possible, or whatever is manifesting in our lives is because of him. And this COVID is also, I think, that kind of the understanding where maybe it's a yuga where too much of sins and adharma, and that's a way to balance it out. And also that's a reminding for us to to chant, to think about him, and if it's something we have missed or not able to surrender, it's a time to do that.
Yep.
Yes.
Definitely a reminder, no doubt.
Yes.
Okay, so then nothing else. Then let's conclude. Thank you so much for your association. So let's pay our obeisance to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Saying Vancha
Patitanam Pavanebhayo Vaishnaveyo Namo Namaha.
Jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai.
Gaura Premanand.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Hemajaganath
Hemant
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Excellent
Jai
class.
Jagannath.
Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhuji.